of a 10 million a year version of your business like? And then you work back from that, because when you work back from that, you realize that if the maths don't change, like the average order value or lifetime customer value or margin, you're going to get stuck. You're going to get stuck at like 4 million. You're just never going to get it's sort of like eyes wide open, and then they realise that actually the goal is to be able to manipulate the maths and to look at that and then be able to track that over time. And so everything in e-commerce, like trying to improve the conversion rate, trying to sort your emails out, trying to sort maybe you're doing SMS, all the little bits of room up. It's all there to manipulate the maths, trying to make the race easier for you to grow. And so when you start it starts with the math and it ends with the maths, and everything else is a byproduct of trying to.
But
when
I
say
think
maths,
the analogy I would
mean
use,
it's simple
which
maths.
has been quite apparent recently, is. Hello, Ian. How are you? This fine bank holiday Monday weekend in the UK. I didn't have a bank holiday weekend, so completely forgot about it. But welcome. Thank you for sacrificing yourself.
Well, I was fine.
Yeah?
I was fine, and I was enjoying my bank holiday until you said podcast.
Yeah.
And I said, it was bank holiday. And you said, and?
You didn't. You just said,
and then I said, okay, well, I'll do it. Well, it was a lovely bank holiday. It was nice. Weather was good. Nice. I went up to Wales again in Abersoch. And yeah, it was lovely.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Well, let's give us a topic. So this week, what I wanted to talk about was basically the history of what we've been doing over the past 4 or 5 years, I guess. Obviously, we've been working in e-commerce for, since we, probably about 20 years now.
But almost 25 years.
Yeah.
We've been working in it.
Yeah, so a long time, and it's changed over the time.
Veterans.
And but what I wanted to talk about is basically how we help people, because I think a lot of people listen to this podcast, and obviously we're putting out some decent information. We hope we're putting out some decent information and all that kind of stuff. But there's different ways of listening, and different ways of learning, and different ways of moving forward. And I thought that this would be a good chance to just unpack what happens, behind the scenes, behind the podcast, in the Hammersley Brothers world, what we get up to, and really a lot of the success stories that we've been working through. So that's what we wanted to go through today. Why are you smiling?
Sounds like we have an exciting, because I was laughing because it sounds like we have a really exciting. Let's unpack what the Hammersley Brothers get up to whilst they're not recording the podcast.
I mean, it's all about the yachts, isn't it? The long trips, the parties, late parties, the models,
the model yachts.
Yeah. Yeah, not like taking 5 screaming kids around. No,
it's not.
North Wales.
Kids. It's kids. E-commerce.
Yeah.
Sleep. E-commerce kids sleep. That's basically what it is. We started in e-commerce about 2005. So it was very, very, very early. And about maybe 2 or 3 years in, it was the financial crisis, 2008 financial crisis. And so when we were working we owned an agency, we still own the agency, and we had a bunch of clients, and the clients that left. So we were doing like normal website stuff and some e-commerce, and the clients that left were all the normal website stuff, and the ones that remained was the e-commerce. And then that was interesting, we thought, and then over the next probably year, we were left with maybe about a dozen or so e-commerce businesses, and some of them were scaling really well, and some of them were just failing. Some of them just couldn't get it to work, and they were just getting stuck or dying, and some of them were just soaring past. And so we wanted to know what was the consistency about the ones that were scaling and the ones that were failing. What was it that happened? And we were in Manchester at the time, and we sat down and locked ourselves away for a couple of days. I remember one summer, and went through all the metrics of it, and not just those 12, but loads of any e-commerce analytics that we'd ever got a hand on, and looked at was there a consistency of the ones that were scaling and the ones that were failing. And then that led to the book, because we were chatting about what we discovered. and it led to the book, and that's what we wrote the
Mm.
book. But the book initially was just people who were, it was really just going to give it to some clients, weren't we? Some internal staff. Then it kind of turned into a much bigger book. But that was about 2017, so it was a few years later
Yeah, well, I mean,
that
the book
happened.
was, I mean,
The
I,
book
I
was
said we
wrote.
were going to write a book, and it took about 5 years to actually write the book because I'd never written one before, and it was, it was kind of like hit and miss. I didn't know what I was doing and how to publish it and all those kind of stuff. So it took a while, but the book was the first time that people kind of got access to some of our model, and it was the model that we'd been using in our own e-commerce businesses and our clients' businesses, and tried to explain what we were looking at and why. And we tried to simplify it down because I think we've all the time in e-commerce, it gets overcomplicated. And I think that you're actually doing quite a simple thing. You've got a shop, you've got to sell stuff, you've got to afford a customer cheaper than you make profit out of the customer. So it kind of boils down to that. And it came from that. And there were certain KPIs, 7 of them, that that really kind of affected that business more than anything else. And like the book first came out in 2018, and I updated it in 2024. I've just done the new edition, and everything has pretty much stayed the same in terms of the fundamental KPIs, but one of the KPIs did change. The KPI that changed was site speed, because back in 2018, everybody was hosting their own websites. Today, a lot of people aren't, and data capture replaced that KPI because data capture has been one of our go-tos since then. So yeah, the book was instrumental in kind of like, first of all, telling people we were sitting in a basement in Manchester. We still got that basement in Manchester. We were there. We were doing lots of e-commerce, and it was just a way of talking to people. And
Yeah.
what was weird was when we started selling, I think, oh God knows, I think we sold about 50,000 copies of the bloody thing, which is insane for a little
Yeah.
niche book.
Well, what was interesting, what I found interesting is that when we were sat around the table in the dungeon and planning the chapters and planning what we discovered and what we found, to be honest, and every time when we were
Mm,
talking about the fundamentals of e-commerce, we assumed that everybody knew the same thing, that everybody had spent the last 10 years
mm,
doing the same thing, that coming, talking about add to basket and basket to order and checkout to order.
mm.
And but they hadn't, so when you write the book, obviously you only know what's in your own head. But when you write the book, people don't think, oh my
Mm.
God, this actually really resonated with them. The book was always very well received,
Yeah. And I
wasn't
think
it?
that,
So again, it was nice. It was a bit of
yeah. And it
clarification of
was
what
out
we were
there.
talking about, what we were doing.
Yeah, and it was out there, but then that
Yeah,
led to the next frustration, really, because you think, well, you've given the information, people can get, people can go and take that, and they can go and do really well with it. And then that didn't happen because people read the book and they kind of implemented and they kind of limped along, and that's why the coaching started, because I started to realize that like same with the podcast and the book. When people listen to the podcast and the information on the book, they listen to what they want to hear. And that's the fundamental thing. You're sure it can help you. The book can help you, and the podcast will help you to some degree. But to make a fundamental change, you actually need to look at the business. You actually need to talk to someone. You actually need to kind of go and do it. Like a case example, like I was speaking to a lady in America yesterday, and she was like focusing on her email flows. And and I took a step back, and she says, oh, this is really complicated. I need to go and get someone to come and do my email flows. I need to work with someone who can tell me how to do this and how to do that. And I was like, say, whoa, take a step back. First of all, you haven't got your data capture rate up to enough to justify doing all these flows. And you haven't got your offer architecture cadence working. So it doesn't really matter. And unless I sit there with them and kind of like take them from that bucket and put them in that bucket, it doesn't fundamentally change stuff. So the coaching came from not frustration, but from the realization that if I got people onto one-on-one calls and group calls, I could actually make a bigger difference. So that's where it came from, and that was the start of the. So there's a few programs we do. The first program is for startup e-commerce. So startup e-commerce, people doing between, we usually say about 0 to 20 to 30 thousand US dollars a month, or maybe £25,000 a month. So that's kind of like the level you'd come into the 20K core. So the 20K core program is, let's get the foundations of e-commerce right. Let's build where you are now. Let's make sure the site is converting before we go and spend a huge amount of money on ads. And when we do spend on ads, let's spend on ads in the right way, in the right models, using a scalable model as we can. So that's kind of how the 20K core program started. And I mean, do you want me to talk about the successes of people who come through?
Well, no,
through
let's
program,
talk about,
do you want to add it to it?
let's talk a bit more. I mean, no, I think, what I think happens is when people listen to the podcast and the book, and it's not just our podcast, but I think it's everybody. But there's an overwhelming amount of information, isn't there? And in some respects, when you read the book and you do the podcast, and this is the problem, I think, when you do like a big chunk of consultancy, is that you actually come out of the session of reading the book, listening to the podcast, or doing a big chunk of consultancy with even more things to think about that you didn't necessarily know before. You go, oh my God, we've got to do this. Oh my God, I've just read this chapter. This is what it is. And you end up being completely overwhelmed and actually trying to do everything. And that's when we tend to meet e-commerce businesses. They're in that zone where they're thinking about everything all the time, and they're trying to revolutionize so many different bits. And actually it becomes overwhelming, exhausting, and you're literally running around in a million different directions. And having basically a scattergun approach. And I know when I go and talk about this, in fact, I'm going to Germany this week, and I'm talking, and the first thing I open with is a chat.
Hopefully not in German.
Well, thankfully they all speak English.
A short talk.
Yeah, thankfully they speak English. But
I could only say that I eat breakfast. That's the only thing I can say in German. Just to help you out on your...
Yeah.
Not to interrupt you, Tor.
Can you say it now? I mean, do you know this?
To be honest, I think it's wrong.
I have breakfast.
Ich esse some Frühstück or something like that. Yeah, ich habe some Frühstück. Anyway, keep going.
Anyway.
Sorry.
So the slide I always start with is literally a piece of shiny tinfoil. And it talks about shiny distractions, and that is the massive, massive danger of listening to people like Mark and I on a podcast, and anybody, is that the temptation of us giving you a shiny distraction is quite real. I mean, we're pretty good at actually debunking the bullshit out there, and I think that's what I personally feel quite proud of, is that consistently we've actually gone back to the fundamental core and never really got obsessed with the shiny distraction. So, but going back to what the state people tend to be in, is that they're doing a million and one things. They've got shiny distractions all over the place, and that is absolutely consistent, I think, with everybody I've ever sat with. And I mean, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of people over the last 20 years, and they're all wanting to know what to do next. And the thing that I think gives people the most comfort, that they really find like a light bulb moment comes off, is when you put it into a structured roadmap. That you're taking all these fragmented bits of e-commerce, which, you know what, the funny thing is, most of the things that people talk about that they want to do are right, but they're not. They're doing it in the wrong order for the size of their business. So there might be something that's really critical if you're at 10 million, you're trying to get to 20. But when you're doing 1 million, you're trying to get to 5, it's a waste of time that you don't need to do it. So it's understanding when, and to being, because so much is just a waste of time. I mean, most of the e-commerce businesses that we own ourselves, we just do the fundamental basics, and 90% of it really, like the classic one is, do you need to do multiple marketing channels? Like, do you need to do Meta? Do you need to do Google? Do you need to? And really, we just pick one until we're doing like a couple of million. We really just pick one, either Meta or Google, depending on what type of business it is. But you don't necessarily need to go headlong and do everything all the time. Anyway. That's my. I'll just say that. I think that's psychologically where people are. And the other thing as well is, people, e-commerce business owners are very emotional when we meet them.
Robotic.
So they don't have the core. Well, we are, yeah, yeah. I mean, I am. You're a little bit, methodical,
Mm.
a bit militant at times. Cut me out. Yeah, but they're very emotional, and the reason they're emotional is because they haven't got a core focus on, in my opinion, the right information, and they tend to look at everything. Tend to look at
Yeah.
all the data, get
We're
obsessed with like
disgusting,
Google
aren't we?
Analytics, obsessed with all the reports, and then it comes out. I nearly said orifice again, but you told me off for that, so I won't say orifice.
Yeah.
It's oozing out of every hole of their head,
Mm.
and well, I think you're
Yeah.
disgusting for criticizing for coming up with. I was just in the flow. Anyway, they're coming. So number one is they're doing a scattergun. They're all over the place. They don't know what to do next, and also they're not looking at the right
Mm.
data at the right time. And so what they tend to do is look at the data obsessively for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then don't look at it again for the next 3 months. And when they and they're just too looking at too many things,
Mm.
too many things. So when you're looking at too many things, you end up not
Yeah.
making any decisions because it's way too complicated. So you don't know what data's right, and also when you look at your roadmap, you're trying to do all too many things. And again, what it ultimately leads to is stagnation. You can get a business maybe to a 500,000 ecom fairly easily, and then when you start to get a bit of growth, maybe you get to like a million, million and a half, you end
Mm-hmm.
up like a bit of a rabbit in the headlights. You're like, oh, should I go this way? Should I go this way? And personally, that's what the biggest. I mean, that's one of the biggest satisfactions as well that I find is that actually
Mm.
putting
Mm.
structure around that chaos and letting people have a clear
Well, it's understanding the
number
basic numbers.
to,
Once
to
you can
go
understand
to
the
work
basic
to.
numbers, you can take the wood for the trees out, and you can see exactly where you are, and you can see what you've got to do. And I think that either you're in a position where you can scale very quickly because suddenly you know your numbers, and you're like, oh my god, this is where I should be, and you're a lot more efficient at double the sales, given your costs and those kind of things, and you can actually make a lot more profit at that level. Or you've got a problem, and you've got a problem, and the trouble is with e-commerce businesses that have a problem is that they probably know the problem, but because it's difficult, they kind of avoid it. They go and work on something else, and it's like, well, you've got to be brought back to the problem because otherwise, nothing's going to change. So it's that fundamental problem. So, let me introduce.
Well, I'm not
Yeah,
sure. I'm actually not sure that people do necessarily know what the
yeah,
problem is.
yeah.
But obviously, the problem is they're not scrape. They're
Mm,
not growing. They're not growing. That's the problem. Obviously, we are unashamedly focused 100% on scaling
mm,
the e-commerce business. We don't want to work with somebody to win an e-com award, or we literally want to be able to scale them. And so I think that, yes, I think that's what they're aware of, that they don't know what to do
mm.
next. But I think the real problem and the fundamental, I mean, we could talk for a long time about this, but the real fundamental issue is that they cannot scale their
Mm.
ads profitably. That's the real
Yeah,
problem,
yeah. I just want to
isn't
bring
it?
it back. I just wanted, yeah,
Anyway, tell me
yeah,
about tell
because
me about the course.
I only introduced the
You
first
you
level.
told me
Only,
before that I
yeah.
I
So
drifted
the first
off.
level is the
Yeah,
20k core, but really the
yeah.
20k core is designed to actually put people into our flagship program, and our flagship program is the Roundtable program. So the Roundtable program is for businesses doing up to about 10 million a year, basically. You do about 10 million a year, and then after that, they go into what we call our boardroom program. So there's been a lot of people that have come through the 20k core, hit their targets, doing a couple of million a year, if not more, and have gone into our flagship program, which is our Roundtable program. The Roundtable program is a program we run every month, and we do one-on-one with everybody. We do calls. We teach them Google ads. We teach them Facebook ads. We teach them what's working in Facebook ads each month, what ads are working. We release the stack we're using in our businesses for Facebook, like the campaign stack and the campaign stack for Google ads in the programs. And we do lots of workshops on understanding where they are. And the most important thing we do is we actually sort the numbers out for them as well. We actually bring them to the model, put them right in front of it and say, this is where you are, this is where you need to go, this is how you're going to get there. this is your number one focus at the moment, and because the reporting was like, this is how you do I was teaching how to do reporting, and I was not setting it up, but I was like showing this what you need to see, but people don't do it. They never get to the point where they can do it. So that's one thing we've had a big breakthrough, because then we've got the same reporting across everybody, and we can go, well, you and me can look at that and go, oh, you're that type of business. That's where you should be. I've looked at 20 other businesses like this, and you're failing on that metric, or you're way better than everybody else. So why aren't you, why aren't you doing 20 million when you're only doing 5 million? That doesn't make sense. So that was the roundtable program, which we get involved with, and
Yeah.
so it was basically to be a position. So the idea of it was that a lot of these people we've met, even the small people on the 20K core, were going out and getting agencies and spending, $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month or even more to try and build their e-commerce business. And I was like, look, if you put the numbers together, the amount of customers that cost needs to generate is much bigger than you're going to get at the moment, and you're going to find it very difficult.
Yeah.
So the idea was,
You know what I'll say, can I just jump in a little bit, because I think you hit the nail on the head, because that's probably the third thing that we would often find is that, number one, they were all over the place, scattergun approach. Number two, they weren't looking at the right data. Number three, they often thought the answer was going out and getting agencies to and in some cases really bloody expensive agencies, to just almost like suck it and see, thinking, well, if I spend, they will come, and at some point, and I think the agencies as well. There are some fantastic agencies, but there's a lot who will literally just take your money and not even ask what your margin is, or your lifetime customer value is, or what's your recruitment ROAS, or what's your new customer ROAS.
yeah,
Literally just going, we'll just go, and don't worry, it's always a bit naff at the start. And I was like shocked how many
they'll say, oh,
times
the data will come back, or this will learn,
yeah,
and then
it'll
it'll come
come
back
in.
and
It
stuff.
takes a
Yeah.
while. You've got to hold your course, but fundamentally, did not knowing what our cost of acquisition could be, not knowing what the ROAS was, except just literally sort of a blind hope, and to be honest, that to me is just a fundamental
See, what will happen with an agency
disaster.
is they'll want to scale the account. So they'll want to scale the spend in the account, and so they'll push the merchant to lower the ROAS target. So they'll go, oh, maybe we could scale it. You told us you wanted to 5, but can we actually scale at 3? And then they'll say, you need to get to 3. No one's achieving 5 in your industry. You need to get to 3. You need to get to 3, without really asking the questions of like, is that even profitable, like for the company? Like it might be, but it might not. And that's understanding. But at the same time, like, with the 20K core people, like Google ads at that level, and even Facebook ads at that level, is simple enough for them to run it
Yeah.
themselves. And so the programs we run is designed to teach them how to do it themselves and give them support, so they can come and ask people what to change, what to do, those kind of things, rather than paying an agency that, no, quite literally is going to go and look at it once a week and make a few changes on it, and to do it themselves. Because fundamentally in e-commerce, yes, it's about having a high converting website. Yes, it's about getting your products and merchandising them and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, like, probably your core is your core marketing channel. And even if you're going to outsource that at some time in the future, or even bring it into an in-house team, I think you need to understand how it works, because it's always going to be difficult if you've got a Facebook ads driven business, e-commerce business. If you don't understand Facebook ads, it's always going to be difficult. It's always going to be really it's having the main thing. It's like being a dentist and not knowing how to do dentistry, and like getting someone in, and like when they're coming for a root filling, you have to go and get someone else and hire someone else to do it. But if you've been a dentist and you know how to do it, and you see someone else doing this stuff, you know how good
Well,
they
at
are,
the very
and you
least,
know whether they're doing a
is the
good
very
job.
least, if you've got a team who's doing it for you, or you could possibly working with a freelancer or an agency, at the very least, is that you know what questions to ask, you know what the structure should be, so you can then measure it correctly.
Yeah.
Because I think often, um, when if you are working with an agency, I often think, you got really no knowledge of even how to question it. You don't know if they're doing a good job. You've got no idea.
Yeah.
So yes, I think that's absolutely
Mm.
true. I mean, a lot of the work we've done over the last probably 3 or 4 years has actually been to grow teams internally, and actually teach people how to do it. And the results are a lot better.
Yeah. And how to, and there's a difference. There's a difference between setting up a Google Ads account and setting up a Facebook account to do ads, and setting up a scalable Facebook ads account and a scalable Google Ads account. So I'm teaching the scalable, how to set up a scalable one, because otherwise you'll find that, yeah, you might get to like, I don't know, $400 a day. And then because of the structure you've built, doesn't scale. It doesn't put you in a position where you can actually scale any further. And there's slight subtleties to it. So it depends on where you're trying to go. If you just want to have a lifestyle business and get a couple of grand a month, fair enough. But if you actually want to scale this and grow this business into something doing, 100 million a year,
I
it's
work
different, isn't it?
really exclusively with the boardroom, level 2 boardroom group, which is the ones that are doing a little bit bigger. And the question I always ask is where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years time? And they might say, okay, I want to be at 10 million. And I always say, okay, well, let's work out, what does a 10 million version of your business look like? And what I really mean is, what are the maths? What are the maths of a 10 million a year version of your business like? And then you work back from that, because when you work back from that, you realize that if the maths don't change, like the average order value or lifetime customer value or margin, you're going to get stuck. You're going to get stuck at like 4 million. You're just never going to get it's sort of like eyes wide open, and then they realise that actually the goal is to be able to manipulate the maths and to look at that and then be able to track that over time. And so everything in e-commerce, like trying to improve the conversion rate, trying to sort your emails out, trying to sort maybe you're doing SMS, all the little bits of roadmap, it's all there to manipulate the maths, trying to make the race easier for you to grow. And so when you start with it starts with the math and it ends with the maths, and everything else is a byproduct of trying to.
But
when I say
think
maths,
the analogy I would
mean
use,
it's simple
which
maths.
has
It's
been
not
quite
like,
apparent recently, is that you've got these e-commerce businesses that they listen to the podcast, they come on, and in 5 minutes, I can see that they are almost like carrying a ball and chain around with them. I'm like, it's like that's dragging you back. Like if you get rid of that ball and chain, you're going to fly, and you don't realize you're even dragging it. And it's like, you just need to be shown where that is, because you're like, okay, I can see this business is doing this. I can see your business is doing this. You've got this one thing wrong. One of the KPIs is just not performing. And no matter what you do until you fix that, you're never gonna be scaling, and you're gonna go up against other people pulling you're going into a sprint race, and you're pulling a ball and chain along with you, and you're just never gonna compete. And it's like, it's so silly, because a lot of the time that's an easy fix, and that's the frustrating thing, knowing that there are people out there with that, and they're just
and actually, and the other thing is that once you recognise it's there's the ball and chain hanging around the neck, anything that you do that doesn't address that fundamental issue is, from an opportunity cost perspective, is actually costing you masses and masses of time and effort and money. So it's understanding what those are. So just let me ask you a question then. So of all the people that have come through the programs, pick out a couple of ones that you think you really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And
the one thing, one of them was I really enjoyed is obviously the really big successes. Like they're always kind of fun. And there was one guy who was kind of working from his bedroom. He's on the 20K Corp program. He kind of rocked up, and he was selling health supplements and products and all those kind of stuff. And we gave him the model. Worked with him on the calls. Probably for about 4 months, and then he kind of disappeared a little bit, and I didn't hear from him for a while. And then he came back probably about 18 months later, and they were then at the beginning they were doing like nothing, absolutely nothing, and then they came back at 18 months later and said, look, I've scaled this, I've done the model, like I think I've pretty much done everything I need to do, and now they're doing 2 million a month, 2 million pounds a month. So in New Zealand, that's like $4 million a month. So it's grown to such a level, and that was a delight because it was kind of like, well, there's so much I haven't told you. There's all this other stuff you can do, and if you want to take that to the next level, you can take this. And I think that's probably going to be eventually be one of the biggest businesses that we eventually have grown from scratch. And that's really exciting. And it was it was quite simple stuff. It was like getting to understand the figures, getting to understand the recruitment, getting them to understand the main channel, getting them to understand the positioning. It was all the basics were there in place. And obviously they were very ambitious and young. So they did really well. So that was one of my favorite ones to see happen with it, because once you get things right, like it's what you find is that some people get to an emotional point where they scale the business, and that's how they feel they want to be. Like they might have an ad spend of a certain amount and they'll kind of stop there. But like the ambitious people will actually say, well, this model actually scales to 10 million a month. So why wouldn't I just expand the model? And it takes a certain type of person to take it that far. And that's been really interesting.
Yeah.
But I've got lots more if you want to talk about some other ones.
Yeah. I'll pick one. I'll pick one then. So I think again, it was a business that started on the 20K core, which is great because they get the fundamentals right and they started to go, and then they joined the boardroom program. And they were doing, I think they were probably doing about 2 million a year, something like that. In the UK, about 2 million a year. Growing at an okay-ish rate, but not, revolutionary. They hadn't fundamentally. And I remember having a chat with them once, and they were selling like cosmetic type stuff. And I remember saying, "My God, if you could get your lifetime customer value up, you could really rocket this business." And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, the problem is when people buy your product, they're only buying it maybe once a year because it lasts a long time." So it was like some sort of, I think it was like some drops that you put in something, and it was, it was being, really great reviews. You put some drops in, it lasted literally like, a year. I said, if you could get something that people consume much more frequently, and you could get the lasting customer value up, you'd be able to afford to recruit a customer so much more aggressively. So at that time, I think they were on like needed a return on ad spend of like 5. And I said, how can we grow? I said, well, okay, if you change the maths, if you could triple the lifetime customer value, you could go out and you could go and recruit a customer for only like, for every pound you spend, you'd only need like £1.50 back. And that's what they did. That's literally what they did. Create some products that were consumed every 5 weeks, and people were buying them, I think, an average of 4 times a year, and the margins were great, and it literally was like a rocket, because all of a sudden they could go to Meta and Google and they could say, actually, we needed a return of 5 before, now we only need a return of 1.5. And they just whoosh off they went, and they'll do 10 million easy this year, easily do 10 million, and they were bumbling along with a million and a half. But because we just fundamentally looked at how do we scale faster? We're going to change the maths.
Yeah,
that's what we did.
Yeah,
and that was brilliant.
And there was, there's a lot. To be honest, a lot of them have kind of done it with ads, but there is one that has scaled. She's come from absolutely nothing on the 20K core, or done it all organically through, through social media and all that kind of stuff. She's quite a bubbly personality, and she's quite young when she started it, and people wanted to follow her, and that was great to see, because she came through the 20K core and she came into the roundtable program and did really well. And effectively that was, I think, like, if you're kind of looking at them, like you were saying about the one where you said, well, if you can see the numbers and this is where you need to be and this is how we need to get there. And then it's very simple conversation. Sometimes it's not as easy to do it, but it's very simple to see where you need to get to. In this one, it was kind of like, it was the positioning of coming into a market. So she's in a sports market, like an outdoor sports market, and coming into that market and saying, well, everybody's being ripped off. Like everybody's being ripped off by these brands. They're carrying all these sponsored athletes, and it came up with the positioning of saying, look, we can do twice the quality or the same quality as everything for half the price, and also you're buying from a cottage brand. And it was just a story. It was a story that we came up with. It was a story, a message that resonated, and it was such a good story that it actually spread organically. And so it was basically, I think there's those three things. And as we start talking, it's the numbers, it's the marketing channels, and it's the positioning, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
Yeah.
And obviously we talk about
do you know what I think the really cool?
Kind of stuff.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I like interrupting you. It's important.
That's right.
But I think the really cool thing about it all is that I absolutely love doing the group coaching and the one-on-one stuff, and it's because you learn so much. You learn so much. We are in such a lucky position because every day we are chatting to, maybe some days half a dozen e-commerce businesses who are all really good at something. They're all doing something really well, and you start to learn more and more and more and more. And I think that's incredible. I probably think, how many e-commerce analytics accounts have I looked at in the last 20 years? I mean, thousands. I'm looking at probably, 6 a day, every day. And so that exposure, and you'll be the same, that sheer exposure of it all is just incredible. And it's lovely, actually, because, you're able to test the model, and you're able to learn and add bits to it. And obviously, all of our stuff like the 6 dominoes and the margin calculator and the drop by drops all come through working with a particular client at a particular stage, a particular brand, whether or not it was ours or somebody else's.
What is exciting?
We've started to add that into the model. So all the cool bit, you just add it in, don't you?
What is exciting is when you do the margin calculation sheet, you do the drop by drop, and you get the numbers onto the numbers sheet. And then you look at the business and you go, whoa, this is, you're like, what are you doing? Like, why, what it'd be like, it's like almost kind of like finding out that you've got, it's kind of like an engine. It's like, you're driving a McLaren F1 and you're driving it like a a Mini Cooper or something like that. Like you've got this, some people are sitting on these amazing engines, these business models, that some of them don't even need to be tuned. They just need to be turned up. Like these need to turn up the volume on them. Other rhythms do need to have a little bit of tuning. Like this needs to be changed. This recruitment product needs to be changed, and those kind of things. But I mean, what is the most exciting is actually coming across those and telling the person. And like there's a lady that she's down in Cornwall. You'll know who I'm talking about, and she's sitting there like, she's got a fantastic little business. She sells one type of product. She needs a recruitment ROAS of, I think she needs a recruitment ROAS of about 4 or something to scale the business. She's sitting on about 6, 7, 8. She just needs to, all she needs to do is spend more on her Facebook ads and Google ads. It's really that simple. And she's going to double the business. And when she doubles the business, if you look at the costs, her fixed costs don't go up, and her agency costs won't go up much. I mean, it'll go up a little bit, but proportionally, she's actually going to make twice the profit at that level as well. And you can just see it. And that's what's fascinating, is it's like people will go and think, here's the analogy I always use. So like when I was employing lots of people in a business in the UK, and I promoted someone to be a manager, right? Because they were a manager, obviously they got a salary, but they saw themselves as a manager, and therefore they went and bought a manager's car. And they thought, oh, I've got to have a bigger house. I'll go and take a bigger mortgage on and stuff like that. But it wasn't necessarily worked out financially in their mind. They would buy things that they thought should look like to be that person. And it's the same thing with e-commerce. I think people kind of go, when they don't understand the numbers that well, or think they do or don't do, they'll go and plug in a certain type of agency or a certain type of cost without realizing that is not suitable to your business model. I mean, just because, like, take the guy who sells mowers, right? He's got like a margin of about 10%. If he does like 5 million, he can't afford the same agency that someone doing 5 million who's got 70% margin. Like, it's not the same, but you might go, well, I'm turning over 5 million. I should be working with an agency. And it makes me laugh sometimes when they go, there was a friend of my father of a friend of mine, when I went to his house in Sheffield, and he was running an old age people's home, and he was like, and he said, oh yeah, we've got a marketing agency, we've got a London agency looking after our ads. And I was like, what you just like, just because they're in London, you think that's going to be like just better just because they're just in the greater London area?
Yeah.
And it's just nuts the way that people sometimes think about businesses, and it's almost like a status thing. Like, they're going, oh, we went to their offices, they've got amazing offices, and they've they've scaled their agencies before, and they've sold them, they're going to be amazing. It's like, doesn't make any sense. Like, you've got to look at your business as your business is. And like, if you go and take on a £10,000 a month agency, like that, you should really know how many customers they've got to recruit to justify that cost at the very least, and also understand how that's going to affect your recruitment ROAS. Because if you think about an agency, you're bringing them on board to recruit new customers. You don't really need their help to get repeat business, because you could do that yourself. I mean, that's a lot easier. And so if you put that cost all against new customers and divide the agency cost by the new customers you're getting, then you've got a product cost, you've got an order cost, a per order cost that is going to affect your profitability on the business. And you can only afford a certain amount. So like, it's just understanding some of those fundamentals and, teaching people that. And so the first step is the numbers, understanding where you are. Second step is understand your positioning. Third step is understanding how lucrative things could be if you did things in a certain different way. And then, only then, do we move on to the marketing channels, and we actually talk about, what type of ads to run and what type of stack to use in your Google Ads account, how to optimize your product feed and those kind of things. Because like I think, it's a bit like this podcast, right?
Well, if you don't do that, if you don't have that structured flow, really anything that you're going to do is really almost slowing you down in a way, because you're not addressing the core fundamentals, and actually you don't know, you're going a bit blind. And I think it's okay for a bit, isn't it, when you're launching? Like, you kind of get, you're launching it, you don't really know whether or not anything's going to take off. But if you really want to try to scale it, in the longer term, you've got to have your eyes wide open. You have to understand what the fundamental numbers are and what the fundamental building blocks of the business are.
I think that being around other people who are good is good. So like we don't just do one-on-one coaching. We actually do group coaching, and we do one-on-one within that, and we do inside and outside. But the most important thing, like I was okay at school, but not great. I didn't do amazingly well at school. I mean, I did okay. I got into a good university, and then I did very well at university. And the reason I did very well at university was because I got into a group of people who were smart, and I was sitting there and I felt like the stupidest person in the room, and I worked really hard because I wanted to be as good as them. So I think your peer group that you're in is important. And I think that if you're sitting there in e-commerce on your own, trying to figure everything out on your own, it's difficult because you're not around some super smart people. And so what we do with the Roundtable program is we put you in the group with other e-commerce people who are super smart, who are just going to ask you certain questions, and you're going to talk to them, and you're going to interact with them, and you're going to see their growth, and you're going, well, if they can grow from 1 million a year to 10 million a year in 2 years, what the hell am I doing? What am I doing wrong? What do I need to do? And I think that it's part of the human nature is that if you're around good people, even on the 20K core program, because when people come into the 20K core program, there's, they go into a Facebook group and there's 600 people who've been through the program before them. And then they ask a question. They're going to get loads of really good answers to those questions, even if it's about Shopify, WooCommerce, whatever it is, because it's like a hive mind. It's so beautiful to see, to kind of see all that knowledge coming through. Because a lot of the time I'm asleep. I'm in New Zealand. I'm asleep when the question's asked. By the time I wake up, the questions on the roundtable program and the questions on the 20K core have been answered for me probably is better than I can answer them. Because they go, well, I tried this extension and it didn't work for us, and we actually came out with this extension. This worked for us, and this is what we're doing. And we tried that, and it's fascinating how things work. And I think that is probably a message that I'd end on is that you are massively affected by the people around you and the people you have contact with, because they change your mental model. And they change the way you think.
And also, you're not alone, are you? You're not alone. And the problems that you'll be thinking about, so everybody else will probably be thinking about the same thing, or slightly ahead in this area, and they've gone past that challenge, and you can help them with stuff. Well, I think it's lovely. I mean, to be able to have a business that you could run with somebody else. I mean, it's like trying to get a piano up the stairs on your own. You just can't do it. And also, I think motivationally too. I think if you're trying to do something on your own, I think that's quite tricky. And just having somebody else that you can just talk about it with, bounce ideas off.
It's bringing energy to it. Yeah, it's energy. It's like coming at the same business over and over again every single day and trying to have the same level of motivation for it on your own is difficult. Yeah. Like at least if you can rock up to someone and someone's going to talk to you on the phone or a Zoom call or whatever and go, hey, it's exciting, great, what amazing day you had, that's brilliant, you can do better. Like even that kind of energy is just enough.
I don't think we're that enthusiastic. So.
To be honest, I'm not. No. But if I have a cup of tea, then I'll be like, yay, let's go.
I mean, let's be truth. We are two very cynical Englishmen. We're not as excited. I'm way more excitable than you. And I know my limits.
You are.
Yeah.
That's why we've got quite a lot of customers in America now, and we're doing quite well with them. But I think we have to be louder and start shouting about our successes and stuff. I don't know.
You give them to me. Okay. I like the American enthusiasm. They're so positive. Yeah. And also,
anyway,
go on then. You're fine. Finish.
I was just going to finish it on. I was like, if you are listening to this podcast and you enjoy what we've been putting out, head over to hammersleybrothers.com and click on the apply button and come and talk to us, because you might be one of the e-commerce sites that is sitting there with a ball and chain or something that just needs to be changed or just a fundamental model, and we can just help you so much faster. And we've put all this in place and it's waiting for you. So come and talk to us. Hit the apply button.
Thanks guys. Back to my bank holiday.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Go and have a glass of wine.
I will.